Okay, so welcome to my YouTube channel, and we'll be having tutorials. Now, before we proceed, let's go straight ahead to our Visual Studio and let us learn some lessons from here. Okay, so sorry for the silence in the beginning. Okay, let me call it code 2. Okay, py. Now, before we begin, let me go over what we've learned so far and the key things you need to remember. Remember that in our previous lessons, we've already lost 6 minutes, so I'll be very fast. Let me see if I'm on record. Okay, so I'm live, then I'm also live here. Okay, so everything is okay. So from here, we talked about variables, variables and variable names. I know you remember. And we also talked about the last lesson we did was on if statement. If statement. So if you remember, we did if statement, and I showed you something like this. Let's say number is equal to, let's say, 100. Okay, so we can say that if, then you state your condition. So if number is greater than, let's say, 90, if number is greater than 90, then print out what? Print first class, or let me say print A plus. Let me say something like that. So I taught you something like this. So when I run it, the computer gives me what? A plus. Okay. So simply the syntax for writing if statement is what? If, then you state your condition. Okay. If, then you state your condition, then you end with a semicolon, you go to the next line, you indent, which is about 4 spaces, then you state then from here you write your what? Your codes. I call it action codes. Okay, so action codes, so your action codes will be here, then you continue with what? Else. Sometimes you may need else statement and things like that. So this is the simple syntax I showed you for an if statement. So realize that this part, I can put a bracket here. This part is my condition. Okay, the one in the bracket is my condition. So if now my condition, semicolon, I leave an indentation to the next line, and I do my action. So this is a simple if statement I taught before coming here. And I showed you that you can use asterisks, plus, minus, division signs, and all those things. I know you don't really remember, but still, I know it's still in your head. And let me add more to the if statement, then we move on to today's lesson. So if, then we go to what? Else. So you can say if else. Now else means that if it is not true, then write print maybe I don't know. I don't know. Okay. print I don't know. So when we run this, let's say the number is 89. Okay, the number is 89 and you run it, it says I don't know. So so we can also have a multiple if statement. We can say if, then else if. But in Python, else if is written as elif. So else if number is greater than what? 80, put what? Maybe print, let's say a string called a minus, or let me say b plus. Let's just say b plus. Then we can also say else if the number is what? Greater than 70, then you print what? B minus. Okay, print b minus. And we can write as many else ifs as we want. So else if the number is greater than 60, then maybe we can print c. Okay, then else if the number is greater than 60, so less than 60, we just print what? Pass. Okay, or no, we print pass. Let me just say. Then if it's not any number at all, okay, if it's not any number at all, we print we don't know. Okay, so this is something simple. So when I run this, let's see, what do we get here? B plus. Okay, so when I change it to, let's say, 45, and I run it, we get what? Pass. And when I change it to, let's say, negative 30, we'll get pass. Pass, because I said what? Less than what? 60 is a pass. So even negative numbers still is a pass. But if it is something like this, some gibberish, then when I run this, we get okay, it cannot process this because it's not a number. Okay, or let's say if we have something like 120, yes, 120 is still greater than 90, so it will give us what? A plus. Okay, so I think everything has been covered. Or let me just say something like true. But true is still going to work. It's going to say pass because true, the value of true is 1. True numerically is 1. Okay, so true is still, like, computer sees it as a number in certain sense. Okay, so this is a simple if statement. That's the last lesson we did before we went on a long 3 weeks break. Now let me spend the rest of the time doing our next lesson. So today we are going to do our next lesson, which is for loops. Okay, so I'm going to do what we call for loops. For loops. Now, in programming, sometimes you may want to repeat an action for a number of times. For example, coming, just let me see. Okay, I don't have it here. But for example, let's take let's say you want to find out if a number or set of numbers. Okay, no, let's say the find out the factors of a number. Okay, find out the factors of a number. Now, to find out the factors of a number, that involves what? A for loop. Okay, a loop. Or for example, now let me do this simple calculation. Let's say we have the number, let's call it num, and we call the number 20. Or let me start with the number 8. By default, we know in our heads that the factors of 8 is what? 1, 2, 4, and 8. Okay, but then remember that all factors of a number are less than the number. That's one thing you should know. All factors of a number are less than the number. So we are trying to find out if a number is a factor of another number. So first and foremost, what we have to do is we can use the what? Use the modulo operator. Okay. So modulo simply means that find a remainder. Okay. For example, 4 modulo 2, meaning that if 2 divides 4, what will be the remainder? This one will give us an answer of 0. 4 will divide 2 times without a remainder. But 5 modulo 2 will give us a remainder of 1. Okay, so 5 modulo 2 give us a remainder of 1. 5 will go into 4 2 times, which is 4. 2 will go into 5 2 times, which is 4. Remainder 1, making the 5. Okay, so once a number is able to divide another number without a remainder, then it means it's a factor. So it means 2 is a factor of 4, but this 2 is not a factor of 5. That's why you have a remainder of 1. So if the remainder is 0, then it means that number is a factor. So we have to check all the numbers if they are factors. Since let's assume we don't know the factors. Okay, so for example 8, let's assume we don't know the factors of 8. So since we don't know the factors of 8, the question is what are the possible range of numbers that could be the factors? So possible range of numbers. Okay, the possible range of numbers is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I said that all factors of a number are what? Less than or equal to the number itself. So factors of 20 will be what? They'll be within 1 to 20. Factors of 100 will be between what? 1 to 100. Always. And always, the first number 1 is going to be a factor, and the second number 8, the last number, which is the number itself, is going to be a factor. But the ones in between, we don't really know. So these are the possible ranges. So if I want to know if a number is a factor, I can do something like this. If I take the number, if I take num, which is 8 in this case, from here, if I take num and we divide it by the first possible factor, which is 1. If we take the number and divide by 1, if it is true, or let's say if the remainder is equal to 0, if the remainder is equal to 0, then you print what? 1, because 1 is a factor. We want to display all the factors of the number. Okay, then we say if the number modulo 2 and the result is 0, then we print what? 2. Okay, then we go again. If the number, we have to test all the possible factors. Modulo 3 is equal to 0, then we print 3. Okay, then if the number modulo 4 is equal to 0, then what? We print 4. So let me repeat this one. Let me say copy and paste and paste, paste, paste. So this is 4, change it to 5. I change it to 5, 6, 6, 7, then 7. Okay, I know 8 is already a factor, but let's still test it out. So if num percent 8 is equal to 0, then we say print 8. Now this is the dumbest way of writing the code. I just want to show the power of loops. Okay, so we want to find out if the factors of 8, and we know that the factors of 8 are going to be between 1 to 8 itself. So we say we divide the number by what? The guess value, or 1. If the remainder is 0, then it means it's a factor, so it should print that number. We divide by 2. If it's a factor, then we print 2. We divide by 3. If the remainder is 0, then we print 3. We divide by 4. The remainder is 0, we print 4. If we divide by 5 and the remainder is 0, we print what? 5. If we divide by 6, the remainder is 0, we print 6. Similar for 7 and 8. Now let us run this code and let's see. we get what? 1, 2, 4, and 8. So 1, 2, 4, and 8 are factors of what? 8. So you realize that we had to write the codes repeatedly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The question is there a better way? So better way of writing repeated codes is to use loops. Okay, so the loop we are going to use today is what we call for loops. Okay, now usually you use for loop when you know that you want to perform an action for a certain number of times. In this case here, we are performing an if statement 8 times. So if we divide, we find the remainder, then we print. We divide, find the remainder, we print. We did it 8 times. So it is perfect for a for loop. So let us write a for loop for this. Now before we write a for loop, let us look at the syntax. The syntax for a for loop. Now to write a for loop properly, first you start with the word for. Then you initiate an iterative variable. For example, I. The iterative variable I is going to be changing in value. So every loop, the i's value will change. For example, if this was a loop, in the first instance, here was 1. In the second instance, it has changed to 2. The third instance, it is 3. In the fourth instance, it is 4. So something is changing, and that value that is keeping on changing, that's where you write what your I. Okay, but you can put anything. You can put number, you can put a factor, you can put anything. I like putting I because most programmers also like putting I. So for I in, then you put in what? For I in, then you set a range. Okay, sometimes it could be a range, it could be a list, or just say an iterative data type. Let me just say a data where you can iterate, where you can pick, for example, lists, dictionaries. So it could be, let me give examples here. It could be a list, it could be a dictionary, it could be a range, it could be a map, it could be a set, it could be a tuple, it could be anything, but it can't be float. It can't be float, it can't be an integer. It could be a string, str. It could be other things. Let me check if we are still online and live. Okay, so we are still online. Only 15 viewers. Okay. Okay, so it's okay. Let's continue. So, list, dictionaries, range, map, sets, tuple, strings, and so on and so forth. So, it could be anything. Now, once you are done with a semicolon, you come to the next line and you leave a tab. Okay, that's 4 spaces, and you write your code. Okay, your action. So, your action codes here. Remember that your action codes here, these action codes you have are, for example, print. The print I have here, that's my action code. Or dividing it by the number and things like that. This could be my action code. Okay, so then you write your action code. Now let us use this for loop to solve this problem above. So for example, I can say for I in, then I can create a range. The range starts from 1 to what? The number. Okay, I've made a mistake here. I intentionally made a mistake just to refresh your mind. Remember, so this range function, I've taught you range function. The range function starts from the starting point to the ending point. But remember that I said that it would always end what? 1 less than the number. So if this number is 8, it is going to start from 1 and end on 7. So we have to do what? Plus 1 here. So that it will end on 8. Then we say that, so this I will be picking values from this side. But first, let me use a list. For clarity's sake, let me use a list. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so these are the possible set of numbers that we are hoping that the factors will fall in. So we are saying that I in this set, so there's a value I within this set, And if we take our number, which is this number, let me copy and paste, Control C for reference, Control V. So if number, this number here, if number divided by I, which I is going to be any of these values, if it's equal to 0, then we print that number. So print I. Okay. So realize that now this I is representing these numbers we're repeating. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So in the first loop, I will go and pick the first number. Okay. Then, so it will be num%1 equal to 0, print 1. Then to perform the calculation. Then in the second loop, I goes to pick 2. Then performs this work. Then I goes to pick 3. Then perform this work. I goes to pick 4. Perform the work. I goes to pick 5. Does the work. 6, 7, and 8. Just the same way we're repeating the code. This code will be repeated by I throughout the list. So when let me comment this one out. So let me comment this out. Let me say Control KC. So when I comment this one out and I run it, we get the same output, 1, 2, 4, and 8. So you realize that the for loop has made our code simple. It takes the same action and applies it to all the list here, all the iterative data here. It applies it to them. Okay, it applies it to them. So instead of writing the list out, we could have done something like this. Possible, let me just say possible factors is equal to, then I say range, then I say start from 1 and end on the number, num plus 1, and that's going to be our range. The possible factors are always going to start from 1 till the number. So I'm going to say that replace this with what? Possible factors. Okay, so replace this with possible factors. And when I run this, I'm still going to get the same thing. 1, 2, 4, and 8. Now, if I'm to change this number, 8, if I'm to change it to 10, it's going to find a range of numbers from 1 to 10 and pick them one after the other with I and run them as what? Possible factors. Okay, so I'm waiting for your questions in the comments below. So please send your comments as your questions, then I would answer them. If you don't have any comments, you can just use some reactions. You can do some reactions here. If you don't have any comments, then okay. Okay, so it's not recorded at the moment, but I'll send you. Yes, it's by default it's recorded. Okay, sorry. By default it's recorded. The link you use to join the meeting, you can use the same link for this session too. So you can just use the same link and you come to this video. Even in the future, 10 years from now, you can just use the same link. Okay, or you can search py4Eng, py for engineering, and you see all the previous videos we've done on YouTube. Py for engineering, all the videos we've done from the beginning on YouTube, you can see them. So this is a simple way of using what? For loops. So now that we can find the factors of a number, we can change this one to 100. So let's see factors of 100. So we have what? 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, 20, 25, 50, and 100. Now, since you are an engineering student, let us deal with another. Let me create another file. Let me call it factorial. Factorial.py. Okay, so this time around, we are going to do something. We call it factorial. I hope you know factorial. Factorial of numbers, or let me say of a number. So for example, if you say 6 factorial, then what you mean is what? 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6. Okay, and this is supposed to give you what's the answer for 6 factorial? the answer for 6 factorial will be, is it 540 or 6 factorial? Let me write the code to find out. I can't even find my factorial. So sorry, it's 720. Okay, so that's the expected answer. So we can use, instead of saying we can ask the user for the number. Okay, so we can say that input, then we can say that enter your number. Okay, so the number the person wants to find the factorial, enter the number. We already know that the number has to be a whole number, so we have to say int. Okay, we put in an int, then we close it. So now we have a number. Now to find the factorial of that number, we have to do what? We have to multiply it. Okay, and there's no function called product. Or is there a function called product? Nah, there's nothing like product of 6. No, you can't have product of 6. So we can use a for loop for the purposes of for loops and say I in range, and the range we start from 1 to what? The number we are interested in, plus 1. Okay, semicolon. And what we want to do is what? What we want to do is let's say factorial is equal to. So first let's start with a default factorial, or let me say answer. A default answer is equal to what? 1. Okay, so what we are going to say is answer is equal to the previous answer times the I. So for example, then when we are done, we print out what? Answer. Okay, now for example, let me put a red dot here. Let me just put a red dot here so we can see how the code runs step by step. It's running. Oh, I think I have yes. Okay, so from here we need to enter a number. So let's say 6. I press enter. Now you see number is now 6, right? So let me watch here. Let's watch from here. Let us watch a number. Okay, then let us watch answer, ANS. Then let us watch I. Okay, so the code is about to run. This yellow line is where the computer is about to run. Okay, so next the computer runs this line, and answer is already by default 1. So for I in range, the computer ran that line, and I is 1. So I goes into this range. Okay, so here in the range is something like range into bracket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because the user entered 6, so it's the range is 1, 2, 3 up to 6. So I goes to pick the first one. Because we are using a for loop, I goes into the range of data, goes to pick the first one, and comes to say answer, which is already the default one, times I. So this literally is what? 1 times 1. Okay, this literally is 1 times 1. So then it prints. So from here we run the next one. So we are in a for loop, so the computer will go back to the previous code and go and pick. So let's take a look at I will change to what? 2. So I goes to pick the second value, which is 2, and comes to perform the calculation. Now answer is 1 times I, which is 2. Okay, so now we've multiplied the 1 by what? 2. We are going to multiply 1 by 2, and we get what? The answer now is updated to 2. So 1 times 2 here is going to give us 2. Okay, now when we run the next code, realize that answer is, sorry, I is 3. So I has gone to pick the third value, and we have 1 times 2. We've done 1 times 2 already. So since I is 3, it's going to do what? times 3 again. Whatever answer times 3. So when I run this, realize that it has been multiplied by 3, which is 6. So 1 times 2 times 3 is 6. Now I will go and pick the next value, which is 4, and perform the calculation by multiplying 4 and multiply 6 by 4, which is what? 24. Then I goes to pick the next one, which is 5. 24 times this one gives us 120. Then the last one is 6. I goes to pick 6 and multiply by 120, and we get what? 720. Now I is done. If you look in here, it is done with the code. 6 is the last number. Okay, 6 is the last number. There's no more numbers. So to break away from the loop and come outside here, and we can say print answer, and it displays the answer for us, 720. So this is how a for loop runs. It goes and it uses this iterative variable to pick the values in whatever you give it here, one after the other, and use them in performing calculations or multiplications or certain functions. Now, it doesn't mean the code here should be only one. It could be if statement, it could be for, it could be anything down here. Okay, so it could have been an if statement, it could have been a for loop or whatever it is. So that is I for you. Sorry, that is a for loop. So this is how for loops are being used, and it is quite simple. So we've used it in finding what factors of a number. You can use it in doing factorials. There are many ways to use a for loop. So lastly, let me go back to this file, and let us take a look at nested for loops. Okay, so sometimes you can have a for loop inside a for loop. Like there's a for loop, inside that for loop there's a for loop. So let's say I want to create a matrix. Okay, let me call it mat A. How do you do matrix multiplication? So when you have mat A, so let me take a list, and you have a matrix, let's say a 2 by 2 matrix. So we have 10, and inside that matrix, the first row we have what? 10, 34. Then the second row we have what? 3, neg 5. Okay, so this is a matrix. Okay, just the same way we have in MATLAB. So this one, it should have looked something like this. 10, 34. Then here on the next line, we have something like what? 3, neg 5. Okay, so we have 10. So this, let's assume it's a matrix. Okay, so this inner list is the row. Okay, and this inner one is the second row. Okay, and this 10 here is in the first column, and this 3 here is also in the first column. Okay, so this is our matrix. Now let us have another matrix, mat B. Okay, mat B, we are going to have something like let me put something very simple. Let's say 2, 6. Then another matrix, let's say 4. Then let me put 0. Okay, so this is also another matrix, and it's kind of look like this. 2, 6. Then we have 4, 0. So this is also another matrix we have, and we are going to perform what? Matrix multiplication. Okay, now remember, Python has a good library for that. Okay, it has a perfect library for that, which we call numpy. So in future, go and learn about numpy. Okay, numpy is a Python library for making these matrix multiplications, and we call it array manipulations. Okay, but here I'm doing it manually here because I want you to understand nested for loops. Okay, so for example, we can say that for I, now in order to multiply a matrix, okay, you take, let's say we are going to multiply mat A times what? Mat B. Okay, So multiplying A by B, you first take the row and multiply by what? The column. Okay. So we take 10 and 34 and multiply by what? 2 and 4. So 10 will multiply 2, 34 will multiply 4. Okay. That's very complex. So I have to be able to select 10 and multiply by 2, then select 34 and multiply by 4, then add them together. Okay, when I add them together, that will be our answer for what? The first column. Okay, 2 by this, yes, that'll be our answer for the first column. Okay, so for example, so we have to say for I, let's say I, let's use ing for I in math A. So here the computer will pick the first value, and when the computer picks the first value, you also need to go and pick the second value. That's for J in math B. Okay, so I will go and pick the first value, which is the first value here will be this whole list will be the first value. Okay, this whole list will be the first value. So when I goes to pick the first value, it will perform the calculation. So the value will be what? 1034, this whole value. And we want to use 1034 to multiply J's value. This is going to be a little bit complicated, but it's okay. So we need to take 10 and 34. I will take 10 and 34, and we need to multiply it with what? 2 and 4. So what's the position of 2? It's 1. And what's the position of 4? It's, sorry, the position of 4 is also 1, but in the second row. Okay, so 4 is located what? In the second row by the first column. 2 is located where? In the first row in the first column. Okay, so instead of doing it this way, let me rather define a range. Okay, so let me rather define a range. So let me define a range of values. Let's say 1, 2. Okay, so I can be 1 or 2. Then for J in another range, which is 1, 2. Okay, so for our first calculation, when we pick when I goes to pick, so what we are going to do is that math A, we need I, which will be 1. I will be 1, which will be the first one. Then J would also be 1, which will be this 10. So 1, 1 will give us 10, because this whole list is in position 1, and the 10 only is also in position 1. Then we need to multiply that by this I, which is in position 2, multiply by the I, which is in position what? 2, and so this one's position is 1, 2, and this one's position is 1, 2 times what? 2, 4. Oh, I don't want to do this. Math A, no, sorry, math B times, let's say I plus 1, I plus 1, I plus 1% 2, okay, plus, then we take the next value, which is math A, and math A is going to be I plus 1 percent 2 multiplied by mat b. I'm trying to do matrix multiplication from here. Multiply by mat b into brackets j plus 1 percent 2. Let me see if my answers will be correct. So this is ij, this is I and j, then this will be j, then this will be I, then this will be j. Okay, so 1 1 2 1, then 1 2, then 1 2, then what? No, the positions of numbers in Python is start from 0, 0 and 1. Sorry, so let me do this one. 0 and 1. I should have pre-coded this one. So 1 1 1 2, then 0 1 0 1. Let me put plus 2 instead. Plus 2. So 0 1 0 1. Then mat b, we need 4, so that's supposed to be 2 2. So let's say into brackets I plus 2 brackets close percent 2, then square brackets. Okay, so I think this one should work. Let me run it and see. Index out of range. So index out of range, they said this index is out of range. So oh yes, it's not 2, it's 1, and this is 0. Okay, and this is 0. Okay, so I'm having a lot of numbers. So the first one, oh sorry, let me print out the answer. So print this answer. So let's see if our matrix multiplication will work. So we have 80, 272, 12, negative 20. Is it true? So 80, the printing of 1 to 100, where is it? Okay, this one. Let me comment this one out. Let me comment this one out. I'm coming. Okay, so when we run this, we have 80, 272, 12, and negative 20. That's our metrics. I've not put it in a good form, but let me see if it will work. So 10 times 10 times 10 times 2 is 20 plus 34 times 6, which should give us around something like 80. Yes. So 10 times 2 plus what? 34 times 6. Oh, that's supposed to give us 224. I think we made a mistake with the calculations. But I'm just trying to show that you can repeat a particular action for a number of times. So I'm trying to do matrix multiplication, but this formula is wrong. But the point is that you see that there is a for loop and there's another for loop. Okay, there's a bigger for loop and there's a smaller for loop. And we can use that to alternate ones and zeros and pick numbers from our metrics to do our matrix multiplication. Now, if you get this equation correct, your matrix here should be also correct. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to show you. So any question, we are done for today. I'll send you your project work late. I'll send your project work tonight so that you can really practice on for loops for now. Any question in the comments? So somebody's asking about how I use a red point. Okay, so from here, for the red point, it's called so when you come behind, when you move behind the numbers, it automatically pops up, then you click on it. Okay, now when you click on it, it's called a breakpoint, meaning that you are telling the computer to stop for now briefly. It should stop briefly. Okay, now you don't run it directly. When you run it here, it won't stop. It won't stop briefly for you. Once you put your red dots, you come here, run and debug. This thing that looks like a bag with a play sign on it. When you click on it, then you click on run and debug, then Python debugger. Then you select a Python file. Okay, so it's already running for me. Yes, so it will run the code, and when it gets here, it stops. So realize that it has stopped. Okay, I can delete this. I can delete this. Now this one is what? Watch. We have variables. These are the variables inside your code. So all your code's variables are here. Mat A, mat B, num100, the range, all the variables I've used. And these are global variables. We've not defined any global variables yet. Okay, basically these variables here are global within this file, basically. But when we get to functions, I'll show you how to make a local variable within a function a global variable. So for now, just see all of them as local variables, or just see them as variables. Later on, when we get into functions, you see the difference between global variables and local variables. Then from here, you see these your variables. But when you click on watch, watch means that I want to focus on some of the variables. Sometimes the variables may be plenty. So when you double tap here, watch, then maybe I want to watch I, how I is changing. Then I also want to watch J, how J is changing. Okay, so I want to watch these values. So when I click next, so realize that my first I value is 0. When I click next, my first J value is what? 0. Okay, so then when I click next, it performs this calc. Now it's on this line, it performs this calculation from here. Then it gives me an 80, which is wrong. Now this one is movable. Most of you will see it up here, or so you can shift it. Okay, so I keep on running. Then my J value now turns to 1. My I value turns to what? It's still remaining at 0. Then this one gives me 272. Then and so on and so forth. Okay, so I want to then click here to stop. Okay, so I want to check what is happening inside my code. So let me say let's say v1. Let me assign them to variables. So my value 1, v2, my value 2, okay, then v3, my value 3, then v4, my value 4. Okay, so these are my values, and once I'm done, I want to print it out. So I want to print into bracket v1 times v2 plus v3 times what? Times, yes, then v3 times v4. Okay, so when I run this, I still get my old values. Okay, now I'm going to investigate how these values are changing and what actually are they. So let me run it. Okay, so I want to watch. So from here you see that let me close my watch. You see that a lot of variables will be defined. Okay, so from here a lot of variables have been defined: I, J, mat, and all those things. Now let me watch. So from here let me add some more watches. So v1, I want to watch v1. I also want to watch v2. I also want to watch v3. I also want to watch V4. Yes, so those are the 4 I want to watch. So now my I is 0, my V is 0. So I 0, so here is 0, 0, meaning that to select the 10. So V1 is supposed to be 10. That's correct. It has selected the 10. Now V2 is 0 plus 2. Let me see. Let me define another thing I want to watch. Another one I want to watch is I plus 2% 2. There's also another variable in there that also changes. I want to watch this one, and I want to watch J plus 2% 2. Okay, so that's also 0. So here we have what? I plus 2% 2 is going to give us what? 0 and J. So 0, 1. So when we take for mat B, 0 and 1, it will pick 6. Okay, so V2 is picking 6, but 0, no, sorry, J is still 0, so it's picking 2. So 10 times 2, that is correct. We have to pick this and multiply by this, then this and multiply by 4. Okay, so now let's see. I still remains at 0 for mat A, but then J will change to, so V3 picked 1. So no, we don't want it like that. So it's supposed to be plus 1. Okay, so now let me start all over, refresh. So I'm trying to debug. What I'm doing is called debugging. I'm trying to debug my code. I'm trying to find the errors in my calculations, then make sure that they are right. So we keep on running. V1 pick 10, correct. The next number you have to pick is 2, correct. The next number we have to pick is 34, correct. We've picked 34 correctly. Now the V4 is supposed to pick 4. So here I is supposed to be, this is always giving us 0. That's the error. So it's supposed to be the plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. Then this one picks 6. That's why we had it wrong. Okay, so let me restart again. Now that I've made my corrections. Anytime you make the corrections in the code, you have to restart, else it will be using the old code. Okay, so this time around, I hope it works. Yes, so here the V, no, it's supposed to pick 2, 1. 1, 1. Oh no. So we are supposed to pick from mat B 2, 2 and 1. So 0 plus 1. So 1, 0 plus 1 is 1. It picks 1. Then the first one. So this is supposed to be just J. Okay. Then I run it again. I restart it to update my values. Okay. Yes, it's picked the correct one. So 10, 34, 10 and 34, 2 and 4. So 2 and 4. And when we run it, we are going to get 156. So that's supposed to be our first answer. 10 times 34 from our matrix, 10 times 2 plus 34 times 4 plus 34 times 4, giving us 156. So this answer is correct. Then we go again. Now the values have changed, and our V1 is now picking 34. No, our V1 is not supposed to be picking 34. So there are some errors. Then picking 34 and 6. No, that's That's outrageous. 34 and 6. 34 and 6. 34 multiply 6. Then 10 will multiply 0. Okay, so it's giving us error. But as you can see, all what I want to demonstrate is that you can have a for loop inside a for loop. So that's all. So if you have any question, let me know. So if you have any question, let me know. Okay, let me go online and see. Okay, thank you. It's time, so I'll close the meeting now. I'll be ending the stream now. So bye. I'll be sending you. So somebody's asking, what does index out of range means? So I think I showed you a list string slicing. Okay, for example, if you pick something like this, if you have, let's say, a list, for example, something like 1, 2, 3. Now you realize that this is in position 1, this is in position 2, this is in position 3. So if I say this is in position 0, this is in position 1, and this is in position 2. So if I say L, select position 2 for me, it's going to print L in position 2 for me. Let me comment this one out. Okay, so let me run this. Enter number 57. So it's printed what? 3. Now 3 is in that position. 3 is in position 2. That's why I printed 3. Now imagine I say position 10. 10 is out of range. So they say index out of range. That's the error is going to give me. So the error is index out of range. List index out of range. So we are asking for a position that does not exist. That position, this is 0, 1, 2. There's no position 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We are asking for the 10th position which doesn't exist. Even if you ask for position 4, or let's say position 3, it doesn't exist. It's out of range. A position 2 is the 3, okay, and position 0 is the 1. Okay, so when you see index out of range, it means that you are picking a value from a list or from a string or from any iterative kind of data where the location where you want to pick your data or you want to slice does not exist. And that's where you get that error. It's past time. So bye. See you in our next